Welcome to Psychic Evolution with evidential psychic medium Jamie Clark and spiritual coach and healer Maggie Clark.
And these abilities are so natural, they're supernatural. And welcome back to another episode of Psychic Evolution. I'm Jamie Clark.
And I'm Maggie Clark, and this is the podcast where you discover the psychic potential within to empower yourself and manifest your psychic and mediumship gifts. And welcome back. We're opening up season 7 with a brand new episode all about clairaudience. And clairaudience is our ability to hear metaphysically. So we're not actually hearing like you're listening to me talking with your physical sense, but you're listening with your metaphysical sense. You're listening and hearing words, vibrational patterns, energies, all kinds of different dynamics. So this whole episode is dedicated in setting your rules and regulations so that you hear comfortably the voice of spirit if you choose to. And then also learning how to develop it, learning how to tune into those channels so that we can refine and improve our clairaudience if we choose to.
You know, and I always say that the 5 physical senses are second nature to the essence of our being, are also for the external life experience. The 5 metaphysical senses are first nature to the essence of our being and is the internal communication for myself. And I always share the fact now that as an internal seeker, I am an intern of the all that is, always growing, always learning, always understanding more of the expressiveness of who we are as that oneness. And as Mag is sharing the fact that those metaphysical senses, becoming comfortable with those, being able to work with those senses in a more effective, relaxed connection, kind of like you're usually used to the physical senses of communication and hearing and that type of a dynamic. So it becomes the inner space astronaut, discovering who we truly are, the oneness, and that there are so many tools and modalities to make these communications. We're not limited. We are unlimited.
So when we think about our metaphysical senses, again, these are the senses that are so natural, they're supernatural. These are the senses that we always have with us, and it's where we register more information than we're even aware of. We're so used to, in our society, being taught how to read, taught how to write, taught how to communicate. We're taught these things through education, through schooling, through life experience, through our parents, all those things. Yet, we also feel very deeply into our environment and into all of life experiences. So there's another layer of senses where we're accumulating information, where we're receiving different impressions. These are what we call our metaphysical senses or our psychic senses. They're exactly the same as our physical senses, yet we might hear something in our physical ear one way, but we're feeling it and hearing it another way in our metaphysical sense. For instance, if someone lies to you and you know that, and you're like, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't add up. You might hear the words that they're saying in your physical senses, but your metaphysical senses are like, well, wait a minute here. I'm not feeling what you're saying. I'm feeling something different. And in fact, maybe I'm even being lied to. What's the first clue in? It's a gut feeling. It's an intuition. But when we're working with clairaudience, the ability to hear with our metaphysical sense, remember that that metaphysical sense is a feeling first. Before you actually might hear the voice of spirit, you might feel into impressions and different information. Now, that's also a sense of clairaudience, that it usually works in tandem with our clairsentience, when you just know that someone's not telling you the truth. That might be a clairsentient feeling, but it's also all these metaphysical senses work together. You don't always have to separate one from the other from the other. The ability to hear something and it registering as non-truth might work in tandem with also the clairsentience and the clairaudience. They might work together. So again, whenever we're working with our clairs and all of our metaphysical senses, a lot of times there's an overlap of those senses. And you don't really need to separate them. In fact, we don't encourage you to separate them. If you're feeling into the situation, if you're feeling into the energy and you're receiving information and you're receiving feelings, that's perfect. We don't want to change that. We want to work with the strong points and the strong suits that we have in our psychic evolution.
And kind of getting into that aspect of hearing what people say and feeling what they mean, I've worked with law enforcement in a number of ways, and I'm very honored and thankful that apparently I was effective enough to where they offered me an opportunity to become a profiler for law enforcement and interviewing other people. And I said graciously, thank you so much, but no thank you. In this case, I wasn't going to chance and look over my shoulder and my family's shoulder for the rest of my life, because we're putting these people away with just what they were saying and what we're picking up in a psychic or metaphysical way. And law enforcement and many other organizations use our abilities. They're not silly. They do have an idea and understanding that it's energy and light and frequencies and all that kind of good stuff. But in addition, exactly as Mag was sharing, that hearing what people say and feeling what that means, those feelings are the language of the soul. Now, I always tie that into when I do mediumship for our loved ones who are on the other side, which is right here, right now, and not all of my clients' loved ones on the other side speak English. They'll come through speaking whatever beautiful language they are, and I'll be like, that is a beautiful language. However, I do not understand that. Please make me feel the information. And now, literally, for me, the translate is everything coming out their mouth energy-wise is in English. I was like, oh my goodness, that is freaking amazing. And it allowed me to not only do that with loved ones, but, with extraterrestrials and interdimensionals and a variety of other beings that we're all right here, right now. It's just a different reality as we perceive it. But using these psychic senses can blend realities. You can bring them together in more ways than what we might have thought we could.
And we talk a lot about being a multidimensional being. And this is where we really encourage you to cultivate that multidimensional feeling in the fact that I can hear something with my physical ear and it is words and vibrational patterns, yet when I'm hearing something in my metaphysical ear, there's different information. There's even more information sometimes. We might hear stories behind the words that people are speaking. And so working with these metaphysical senses allows us to become very multidimensional so that we can hear on one level and hear on another level and also process that on another level and have them all intermingle, have them mix together. We're not taught how to be multidimensional. And so that's part of our mission at Psychic Evolution, is to remind us all of the eternality of our soul, that we are multidimensional beings. And when we improve and work with our psychic evolution, our psychic senses, and these clairs, they start to blend. Our realities can become one and blended, even though they're vastly different in appearance.
And I always say the fact that, to me, words are the language of the mind. Feelings are the language of the soul. And words, to me, are nothing but mere vibrational patterns on our ear knobs that we've trained ourselves to hear those patterns and apply a meaning. That's why I always say with any other language, what does that mean? Same thing, different vibrational patterns on the ear knob. So it becomes the old adage, a rose by any other name is still a rose. It's just a label. It's a communication of getting us to understand, that particular physical item that we have. And those physical, metaphysical vibrations of energy are what you can blend realities with and be in the planet, but not of it. It can give you a shift in consciousness. A lot of times to be able to more effectively understand where people are coming from, that they're saying one thing, but you also might gain a little bit more knowledge and information with the feelings that you have connected to these words. And I'm very honored because those feelings do help me to understand people a little bit more effectively sometimes in a way that they're like, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. I'm like, okay, cool, let's keep going. So, the best that I can, I need to understand where they're at. And when they can feel that they're safe, that they can communicate, that they can talk with me, not just to me, they open up their lives, they open up their experiences and their metaphysical senses a lot more comfortably and more empoweringly.
As we go forward, I do want to bring up a couple really commonly asked questions around clairaudience. And it's all about setting up rules and regulations so that we're hearing things comfortably. So the questions we get is, how do I turn it off? Sometimes people are hearing a lot of chatter. Some people are tapping into other people's conversations telepathically. Sometimes they're just hearing voices and they don't know where they're coming from. So if you are uncomfortable hearing whatever it is you might be hearing right now, we always encourage people, again, remember, before going and practicing any of our psychic evolution, we set up safety rules and regs first. We have podcast episodes around safety rules and regs. Please check them out and listen to those to help you set those up if you haven't already heard them, because we do encourage that first. So in those rules and regulations, it's about understanding that we have choice. If the volume is too loud, we can ask to turn it down. There are times in our lives where I've experienced and, really talked to people and heard that, oh, I had the chatter in my ear and I just shut it off completely. And then when they wanted to open it up, it didn't open up as fast as it did shutting it down. And it took many, many years to get back to the point to where they were. So we don't always encouraging just shut the door unless you absolutely want to. And then, of course, that is up to you. But turning the volume down works. So there can be a mild chatter there. And then having buttons that like, hey, higher self, if there's something I need to hear in this conversation that I'm hearing, or in my clairaudient abilities, please turn the volume up so that I listen to it, that I can hear it, and then turn it back down so I'm not bombarded by the telepathic information that I'm receiving in my environment, my world.
But notice what Mag's saying. You control your abilities. Your abilities do not control you. And the empowerment of self-realization that we can use all of these tools, all of these modalities, all of these senses to make a more effective communication with not only others, not only the universe, but with ourselves.
So we practice going into our spiritual room and really digging in to work with these senses. If we're working with clairaudience, we're going to be on, usually sitting in the seat of our soul, in the spiritual room with our console in front of us, but we have all these surround sound speakers. If you followed Jamie's spiritual room techniques, you have surround sound speakers or whatever it looks like for you. In this surround sound, we are listening and we're turning up volume so that we hear things maybe from certain areas of our head, if that's comfortable for us. So we're always thinking about, okay, what needs to be turned up? What volume needs to be turned up? What volume needs to be turned down? So a lot of what I've decided to do is I'm way more open clairaudiently in between falling asleep and waking up. It is a sweet time where I actually hear the voice of spirit, not just telepathically hear it, but I actually can hear it a lot of times. So I actually, during those times, I have it on autopilot that I automatically turn the volume up so that if spirit wants to say something to me, wake me up in the middle of the night to do some work, whatever it might look like, I hear the message. And it's usually very, very clear, like someone speaking in my ear versus just an impression or a feeling of information. But clairaudience are both of those things. One, you're actually hearing someone talking in your ear. That is one level of clairaudience. But remember, that's not all of clairaudience. There's also the impressions, the telepathic feelings that you hear through the vibrations of your clairaudient senses. There's a lot of ways to receive information through those clairs. So that is one thing that I have on autopilot in my rules and regs. Before I go to bed, right after I wake up, if I need to hear something, or even waking me up in the middle of the night, I like to be woken up by voices versus just like, why the heck am I awake? At least I know why I'm waking up. So that's another thing that you can practice working with. Remember, when you're setting up your rules and regulations, they are yours to set up. On my console, I have volume buttons. I have buttons for when I wake up, when I go to sleep. I have buttons for a lot of different things. So get creative with your rules and regs. Too many buttons might be too much for you, but working with those and spending time in your spiritual room to improve that aspect of clairaudience can really, really tune you in and help you.
And our loved ones and others are very interested in talking with us and communicating with us. And for myself, I always share the fact that keep it simple, keep it easy, keep it effective. And what I mean by that is if you're in your spiritual room and you're having someone connecting with you and they want to talk clairaudiently, they'll show me a phone. If they're good at communication through showing me the physical clairvoyant pictures, they'll show me a movie projector. Create your own language of communication because they are very strongly excited to connect with us. They also want to know what are your most effective tools and ways of communicating so that we can be more efficient, so that it can be not guesswork, but integrated soul work. And when we can find those ways of communicating with us in any way that, oh yeah, if someone's starting to show me a phone and they were wanting to talk with me and I wasn't quite open, I'd reflect, how about a projector? And so, again, you can allow them to make their own choice of communication. Again, whatever symbols, whatever works for you, keep it in that way because it works for you. It's your creation of communication. And when it's a calling card of communication, it makes it a little bit more simple and easy. And again, you could go on and on with dimensions and all that kind of stuff. But keep it very simple and effective because the more that you work with these abilities, the more that you get comfortable, the more open and receptive you'll be with freedom of expression, not fear of negation.
One of the techniques that I've used that I think has really helped me develop my clairaudience has been journaling, because automatic writing is this beautiful thing where our minds get out of it and all of a sudden we feel like we're channeling information or channeling a message to ourselves. I learned how to do this naturally. It's so natural. It's supernatural. I'm going to tell you right now. I learned how to do this journaling. I would journal like, oh, okay, cool. I reacted today. Let me journal about this. Let me get this energy off me. Let it get it out of me. Let me understand why I reacted or whatever. And then after that, what is the higher message? What is the way through? What guides me to feel good and to connect with love again if I've been in a state of reaction? So I use journaling as a key, one, to know myself and to find myself. But then also what I discovered is after I got all the magginess out, whatever I was processing that day, and we could call it ego if we want, because it, definitely part of that. I get all the magginess out, and then what's left is this beautiful message of clarity, of understanding, of love, of support. And I realized as I was journaling and writing, those weren't things that I was thinking about. I was thinking about the reaction, how I needed to work on myself, maybe the issues, where they came from. But then all of a sudden slipped in there was this beautiful message of hope, a beautiful message that returned me to love. And I realized I was tapping into my higher self. I was tapping in and communicating through automatic writing. And so I wasn't necessarily hearing in my ear, yet whatever I was hearing in my metaphysical clairaudient sense was being journaled. So we always want to think clairaudience doesn't have to be hearing the voice of spirit. It can be feeling words and vibrational patterns of energy that can come through automatic writing. So this is something I always encourage journaling for people who want to discover themselves and want to work out the kinks. And I think it can really help open up that level of communication. Remember, when we're journaling, we're also opening up the throat chakra. So if you're like me, I used to be really shy. I had to learn how to communicate. Isn't it funny? We podcast now. Both Jamie and I were really shy growing up and didn't really want to do public speaking, didn't really want to speak in front of people. I was so nervous to say hi to people in a high school hallway. It was silly, but it was a real thing. I was so nervous. That sense of expression, I hadn't really cultivated that yet. And so when we are tuning into our clairaudience, sometimes it's giving us an energy to open up the throat chakra to be able to express ourselves. Remember, when we're expressing something that's multidimensional, we might be expressing the little Maggie ego side or the higher self Maggie side. So remember, this is a throat chakra. The throat chakra helps with clairaudience because clairaudience will open up all forms of listening and hearing, which is half of communication. The other half is speaking. And so anytime we want to open up the throat chakra, whether through journaling, through chanting, through singing, through whatever helps you open up your creative expression, you're also going to be working on your clairaudience, because clairaudience is the ability to hear. That's half of the communication piece.
Mag, as you're sharing that, that brings up an interesting question for me, and that is, you're able to half listen, half write as the communication. For myself, I would write things down for many years, but it would get to a point to go, what the frig was I writing about? I just kind of, what the? And so now I always share the fact that I record into my phone. Is there a potential that you could do some channeling, speak into the phone, and then have it transcribed into writing, where it could possibly be less distracting of having to try to keep up with the words, but aligned with the expression of the words of communication? Is that possible, or how does that work?
Oh, yeah, it's completely possible. I think what's nice about writing, so studies have been done. If you write more than about 450, 500 words in 15 minutes, you have now basically shut off the brain that's analytical, the left side of the brain that wants to be like, oh, I spelled that wrong, or I forgot a period, or this is a horrible, what was I going to say? It shuts that down, that level of awareness, because our brains don't keep up that fast, so to speak, with being nitpicky and the analytical side of it, which leaves a free flow creative process. So our brain naturally has the right side of the brain, which is this whole creative process. So a lot of times when we're working with our metaphysical senses, we're working with that creative process. And we try to separate it, saying, well, how do I know if that's spirit or if that's just me? Okay. But how are we any different than spirit? Because we are spirit in matter. So we just have to think about this and try not to get locked into an analytical way of seeing the world, in the sense that we are multidimensional. Time and space are an illusion. And what's difference between my creative process working through receiving something from spirit and my creative process of creating maybe writing a music or writing a poem or writing a book? That's still a creative flow. So the question is, where is it different? Where does Maggie end, and where does maybe Maggie's higher self or one of her spirit team pick up? Now, that is a very good question, because a lot of times is this my imagination? Am I making it up? Am I really hearing it? Where is it coming from? I want you to ask these questions. We want you to ask the questions, because you don't get the answers until you ask the questions. When you ask your questions, feel it. Does it feel like me? Does this feel like something I normally think about? Does it sound like me? Or was I receiving a message? One of the reasons I encourage the journaling process is to help discover what that looks like. Because when Maggie writes like this. But when Maggie knows the difference now between her and maybe spirit working with her to give a message to someone, or writing a book or something else that might be somewhat channeled, it's a vastly different feeling. But you can't logically say why it feels different. It just feels different. And until you know the difference of how that feels, you're going to continue to question. You're going to continue to question until you can completely say, that was definitely the voice of spirit, or that was definitely my higher self. That wasn't me. Okay. But again, if we're all one and we're all connected in a multidimensional reality, does it really matter? Okay. That's a philosophical question we're not really going to address or answer today, but words to think about.
It is the five physical senses are our ability to understand and connect with the external reality as we perceive it, this third dimensional reality, all energy, light, frequencies, and vibrations. The internal communication, the language of the soul, transcends all the limitations of physical, that I have to see it, or I've got to hear it, or I've got to do this to have it a solid experience. You'll be able to start blending dimensions. And as we kind of move along here, we'll give you the techniques to hear the circumstances, the experiences, the birds, whatever it is, on a physical sense, while you play it back on a metaphysical sense. all of these vibrational patterns of information will be registered in your Solodex as an eternal being of life experience. And the more that we can register those aspects of communication in many different ways, whatever works for us, the more fluid, the more open, and the more receptive and able to communicate with other dimensions, other beings, other levels of consciousness more effectively and naturally. And so naturally, it's supernatural.
When we hear voices from our loved ones, say we're doing mediumship and we hear something on our clairaudience sense, it's not always that we're hearing voices in our head. It might just be voices, word patterns, feelings that is what we quote unquote say that we hear. Sometimes it is specifically a word in your head. And so those come out of the blue, or they come when you're working with the mediumship and you're asking, hey, loved one, do you have a message for me? Give me a word of the day. Give me a feeling of the day. This is another thing that you can do in your spiritual room if you're working with mediumship, to be able to hear your loved ones on the other side. Take them into your spiritual room and say, hey, I want to see if I can interpret one word that you're going to give me today. So give me a word. Let me open up my metaphysical senses. Let me see what I can hear. Grab a pen. Grab a piece of paper. Start writing down everything that you feel. Not what you think, but everything that you feel. And then say, okay, is there one word to describe everything that I'm feeling right now? And this helps form that bridge between your hands and writing and journaling, and then understanding and perceiving and feeling information from your loved ones. You can do this with your higher self as well. If you're working with just that relationship to your higher self, you'd say, okay, higher self, let's have one word of the day. Let me just take a pen, piece of paper, and just start writing down everything that I feel, and then narrow that down to that word. Maybe you'll get a validation in that day of a certain word that you thought it was, and it'll be like, that's the word, that's the word, that's the word. Maybe it'll be a different word that comes up saying, hey, I kept seeing this word today. Maybe that was what it was. And you'll go back to your notes of how it felt and what the impressions were and what you were writing down and be like, that was the word. So you can start by actually coming up with your own exercises to work with your loved ones or to work with your higher self, all to improve a certain metaphysical sense that you might be developing. And in this case, in this podcast, we're talking about clairaudience. So developing the ability to hear what those words are.
And if you want to work with your loved ones and want more of a fairly solid communication, if you have any recordings of your loved ones speaking, you know their vibrational patterns on your ear nubs. It will be the same vibrational patterns on your soul nubs. It will be their soulprint of consciousness. Remember, soulprint to me is like fingerprints. We are unique. Nobody's the same. That's how our loved ones know who and where we are at all times, and but a thought away. And it's that mental connection that is not easy because we're so used to the external of physical connections. The metaphysical things that I can't necessarily touch or that kind of thing is a little scary. I'm not used to that. Well, we want to get you used to it in a comfortable, safe way. Because not only is it the communication of words, but it can be the communication of feelings in this. And what I mean by that is if I'm doing a mediumship read and I'll have a loved one coming through and they'll be showing me the adventures of life in roller coasters, and it was fun and a great time, and that they're up on a mountain as they hike, and it became a vibrational pattern of information to go, oh, they're excited about all of the experiences that they're able to do now, physically and metaphysically. It's that kind of a connection. And our loved ones are hungry, very excited to want to connect with us, to want to communicate and bridge that level of communication. And the more we do this, the better you get. And for me, just like Mag, I question everything. I do this 24/7, but I'm not stupid. Well, not that stupid. So if I can question things, it's a little more practical. Because I did want to go, yeah, I'm hearing voices. Really, are you really hearing voices? Are you? So for me, in my own comfort, I need to know with confidence, not cockiness, confidence when you can back it, cockiness when you can't, that I can open up free, receptive, and empowered. So it also becomes different ways of communicating. Again, the end result is information, in this case from loved ones or ETs or interdimensionals or whoever it'll be. but learning to have those calling cards, if that's more comfortable for you, going, they can talk with me. They're going to talk with the soul phone. They can connect with me in a picture way through the mental thoughts. Okay, you know what? Then to show me a projector, because I know that from that mechanism shines the light of the picture of what they're sharing. They become the projector. The information is the light that's being shared. The reception and integration is my ability to pick up those vibrations of information. And again, it's whatever works for you. I love to question things because, like I said, that intern of all is what I thrive with. I am hungry. I have an insatiable hunger to understand, to question things. Because I know, as I always say, the more that I know, the more I know. I don't know nothing, man, but I'll share my perspective. And if you can give yourself permission to do the best you can with, if you choose, working with your psychic abilities, those metaphysical senses, it will be a lot more comfortable and empowering for you because you are giving the okay to different levels of communication.
So your homework is to maybe get out a journal, a pen, do some automatic writing, take yourself into spiritual room, set up your rules and regs of how you want to receive, when you want to hear, how you want to hear, volume up, volume down, certain times of the day that work well for you, or only when you're in your spiritual room in a place of relaxed meditation and active meditation, and see what happens, see what you feel. And if you have any questions about clairaudience, let us know. We'd be happy to answer them. So we want to thank you for tuning in today to Psychic Evolution and taking this journey with us. Remember, this is all about opening up the throat chakra, not on a physical level, but on a metaphysical level. This is about opening up and expanding your intuition, your senses, the multidimensional you that is so supernatural. We are so grateful that you have taken the time to spend with us on our podcast today. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
And remember, these abilities are so natural, they're supernatural.
And if you want to have more fun with your psychic evolution, we do have a mystery school. Check it out. There'll be a link in your show notes, and you can join us and indulge in all our classes and become a part of the Psychic Evolution Inner Eye family. And if you feel like this podcast can help someone, please share it with a friend if you feel like it could help them grow and expand in their psychic evolution.
Until next time, have fun with your psychic evolution.